I turned 64 this past March, and I genuinely believed the worst chapters of my life had already been written and closed. I was wrong about that. Dead wrong. My name is Harold Whitfield, but everyone who has known me longer than 5 minutes just calls me Hal. I live just outside Asheville, North Carolina, on a little patch of land my granddaddy cleared back in 1952. The Blue Ridge Mountains sit in my kitchen window every single morning. And for 64 years, those mountains have been the most reliable thing in my life, until the morning everything cracked open. It was Thanksgiving, around 9 in the morning, when my phone started rattling on the butcher block counter. I had a 14-pound bird in the oven, fresh cornbread cooling on the rack, my late wife Eleanor's good blue dishes laid out on the dining table the way she used to arrange them. I was wearing that ratty old wool sweater my daughter Hannah always rolled her eyes at, the brown one with the patched elbow. I was humming. That's the part that stays with me. I was actually humming an old Hank Williams tune, content as a man can be. And listen, I want to pause here for just a second, because if you've ever been a parent, you know exactly the kind of morning I'm describing. The kind where everything in your bones feels right. The kind that makes you stupid and soft and unprepared for what's coming. The text was from my son-in-law, Travis. Hey Hal, Hannah's running a bad fever this morning. She feels awful about it, but she's not going to make it over today. She'll call you when she's up. I read it twice, then a third time. Then I stood there in my kitchen in western North Carolina, with the smell of sage and butter all around me, and something cold started crawling up the back of my neck. Hannah had never, and I mean never, missed a Thanksgiving. Not in 32 years. Not when she had walking pneumonia her sophomore year at UNC. Not when she was 9 months pregnant and her ankles looked like grapefruits. Not when Eleanor was in hospice that final autumn. My daughter showed up. That was just how God built her. I tapped back fast. Is she okay? Can I get her on the phone for just a minute? 3 minutes passed. 5, 10. She's wiped out, sleeping it off. I'll have her ring you when she's up. I set the phone face down on the counter and just stood there, looking at that turkey I'd brined for 19 hours in apple cider and rosemary. And folks, I'm going to be honest with you here as your narrator. If I had felt that exact same dread on a normal day, I might have brushed it off. We all do that. We all explain away the prickle on the back of our neck because the rational world tells us we're being dramatic. But 32 years of Thanksgivings, that's not a pattern you ignore. My wife Eleanor passed 5 winters ago. Ovarian cancer, the slow kind that gives you just enough hope to break you. Hannah was all I had left of her, 32 years old, second-grade teacher down at Black Mountain Elementary, and she had Eleanor's laugh, exactly, that bright, open thing that filled up a whole room. She'd married Travis Calloway about 3 years ago in a little ceremony at Craggy Gardens up on the Parkway. I walked her down a path lined with mountain laurel. I gave that man my daughter's hand and trusted him with the most precious thing I had on this earth. I dialed her cell. 4 rings. Voicemail. Hey, you've reached Hannah. Leave a sweet one. I left her a message. Told her I loved her. Told her to rest. Told her I'd freeze her a plate. She never called back. By 6 o'clock that evening, the bird was stone cold on the counter, and I'd called 9 more times. Travis sent 1 more text around 4. Still asleep, Hal. Don't worry yourself. Don't worry yourself. Listen, I have been a lot of things in this life. I worked as a civil engineer for the Tennessee Valley Authority for 26 years. I raised a daughter mostly alone after Eleanor's first round of chemo took everything out of her. I buried my wife. I rebuilt my own back porch at 62 because the contractor's quote could have fed a family for a month. I am not a man who panics. But I know my daughter, and I knew, deep in the place where a father's gut never lies, that something had gone terribly wrong. And here's the thing I want you to hold on to, whoever you are listening to this. That cold feeling, the one that doesn't have a logical reason behind it, that is not anxiety. That is information. Your nervous system is telling you something your conscious mind hasn't caught up to yet. I didn't sleep 1 minute that night. I sat in Eleanor's old rocking chair by the front window, the way I used to sit when Hannah was 16 and out past her curfew with that boy from Weaverville. Except this time, there was no headlights coming up the driveway, just the porch light flickering, and the wind moving through the pines, and my own gray reflection staring back at me from the dark glass. Around 4 in the morning, I made up my mind. Hannah and Travis lived about 35 minutes north of me, up in Madison County, in an old farmhouse they'd been renting for almost 18 months. Tin roof, wraparound porch, a big faded red barn out back where Travis ran his small construction outfit. I'd helped them move in. I'd patched their kitchen sink the previous October when the trap rusted through. I knew that property the way you know the back of your own hand. I did not call ahead. I climbed into my old GMC Sierra, 212,000 miles on her, and I drove. It was just past 7:15 when I turned onto Beaverdam Road. The frost was thick on the cattle pasture, and the sky was that flat, mean gray. That means real winter is finally serious. I slowed down maybe a quarter mile before their driveway because something stopped me cold. 3 vehicles I had never seen in my life were parked along the front of the property. A black Cadillac Escalade with tinted windows, a silver Dodge Ram with mud halfway up the door panels, and a white panel van, no plates on it. Lights were on inside the house. I could see shadows moving behind the front room curtains. I pulled my truck onto the shoulder about 120 yards back, killed the engine, and just sat there. Travis drove a forest green Ford F-250. His mama Carlene drove a beige Buick. I knew those 2 vehicles like I knew my own. None of these out here belonged. And I want to stop right here for a second, because I think this is the moment where most of us, if we're being truthful, would have hesitated. We would have told ourselves a comfortable story. Oh, maybe Travis has friends over. Maybe it's a contractor thing. Maybe I'm being paranoid. If you ever find yourself in a moment like that, please listen to me. Comfortable stories are how good people end up too late. I pulled out my phone and dialed Hannah one more time. Voicemail. I tried Travis. 1 ring, and then dead silence. Not voicemail. The call had been rejected by a human finger. That was the moment I knew. I climbed out of my truck and I did not walk up that gravel driveway. I knew that property. There's a tree line of white oaks and hickories running along the eastern edge, all the way from Beaverdam Road back to the barn. If you stay tucked in those trees, the front windows of the house can't see you. I'd walked that line with their old beagle, Biscuit, the previous summer. I knew exactly where every fallen log lay. The frozen ground was loud under my boots and the dry leaves crunched louder than I wanted. I moved slow, careful, breathing through my nose. I could hear voices now. Men's voices, 3 or 4 of them, low and clipped, some kind of country radio playing inside, bass thumping. The sour smell of cigarette smoke drifting on the cold air. I came around to the back of the house, and I froze. The barn door was cracked open about 6 inches. A light was burning inside. That made absolutely no sense. Travis kept that barn locked tighter than a bank vault. His tools, his equipment, his table saw, he was particular about all of it. He had told me a dozen times, Hal, that barn stays locked, period. That door should not have been open. Not for any reason. I cut across the back pasture low and quick, the way my own daddy taught me to move when he used to take me hunting for whitetail up on Mount Mitchell 40-some years ago. I pressed myself flat against the weathered red boards of the barn wall, and I listened. I heard breathing, quiet, strained, deliberate, the breathing of someone trying very, very hard not to make a sound through their pain. I pushed that door open another foot, and I stepped inside. The barn was lit by one ugly yellow work lamp hanging from a crossbeam. Travis's tools lined the walls like always. The riding mower in the corner, the neat stack of 2x4s, and in the back corner, on the cold concrete floor, zip-tied with her wrists behind her around a 4x4 support post, was my daughter. Her bottom lip was split open and crusted. Her left eye was swollen shut, the bruise gone deep purple. She was wearing the same clothes I'd seen her in 5 days earlier, the cream cable-knit sweater and dark jeans she'd had on when she stopped by my house that Tuesday before Thanksgiving to drop off a sweet potato pie. She had been in that barn for at least 2 days. I want to stop here and try to tell you what it feels like to see your child like that, but I don't have the words. I don't think any language has the words. What I can tell you is this: my hands were perfectly, eerily still. I have thought about that 1,000 times since, how completely steady my hands were in that moment. The body knows things the mind doesn't. I crossed that concrete floor and I knelt in front of her and I cupped her face in my palm. She opened her one good eye. "Daddy," she whispered. Her voice was nothing but cracked sandpaper. "Daddy, you have to go. They're in the house. There's 4 of them and they're armed." "I know," I said, low and even. "I'm getting you out. Don't speak loud. The ties. Let me see your wrists." I scanned the wall. Travis kept a Stanley utility knife on a pegboard hook right next to the door, exactly where it always lived. I grabbed it, came back, and sliced through those zip ties one at a time. Hannah let out a small cracked gasp when the blood started coming back to her hands. She pressed her face into my shoulder, and I held my child for exactly 3 seconds, because 3 seconds was every second we had. Can you stand? I asked. Yes. Can you run if I tell you to? She looked at me with that one swollen eye, and through all that pain I saw her mother's stubbornness. Yes. All right. Listen close. We go out the back wall. My truck is on the shoulder. You stay in the trees. You stay low. You stay behind me, and you do not stop. Not for anything. Not for any sound. Do you understand, Daddy? She gripped my forearm hard. He sold us out. Travis. He's been borrowing money from these men for months. Some kind of a deal that went sideways. They came here Wednesday night and She swallowed. They told him if he didn't have $150,000 by Friday morning, they were going to start taking pieces of me. I understand, I said. I kept my voice as flat and calm as a frozen pond. We're leaving right now. You can tell me everything else once you're somewhere safe, okay? She nodded, and I want you to hold this thought with me right here, because I think it matters. If you ever find yourself in a hostage situation, or near one, the temptation is to scream, to fight, to confront. But fear is loud, and survival is quiet. Quiet gets you out alive. What I did not say to Hannah was that from where I was standing, I could see through the cracked barn door that the back screen door of the farmhouse had just opened. A man had stepped out onto the back porch and was standing there in the cold, lighting a cigarette. We had maybe 60 seconds before he turned his head toward the barn. I led Hannah to the back wall, where there was a small swing-out window I had already clocked the second I came in. The kind on rusty iron hinges that old barns always have. I worked it open without a single squeak. I helped her through first, easing her down onto the frozen ground. Then I climbed through after her, dropping down hard on my bad knees. The tree line was about 25 feet away. I glanced back at the porch. The man had his back to us now, phone pressed to his ear, staring out toward the road. I grabbed Hannah's hand, and we ran. I am 64 years old. I have a torn meniscus in my left knee, and a hip replacement scheduled for February. And I ran across that frozen pasture like I was 22 years old again. Hannah ran beside me, and she did not make one single sound. We hit the tree line and we plunged into those oaks like animals, weaving north along the road, parallel to it, until we were well past where I'd parked my Sierra. Then I cut hard left, back through the trees, and we came out on the shoulder maybe 60 yards ahead of my truck. I scanned both directions. Nothing on the road, no movement at the driveway. We climbed in, and listen carefully here, because this part is important. I did not start the engine. Get down on the floorboard, I told her. She did. I started the truck. I pulled onto the road slow as Sunday morning. I drove right past the driveway at 30 miles an hour, keeping my eyes straight forward, the way you drive past something you do not want to be connected to. In the corner of my eye, I caught the man on the porch turning back inside. We cleared the property line. I drove 2 miles down the road. Neither of us said one word. Then Hannah started shaking violently. You're all right, I said. You're out. I've got you, baby girl. Dad, they hurt Travis too. Her teeth were chattering. He's still in there. They had him in the kitchen the first night. He was trying to fight them off me. That's why they separated us. They told him if he made one more sound, they were going to make me listen to them kill him. Hannah, I said, I need you to hear me clearly. I am not calling the Madison County Sheriff. She turned her face to me. Travis told me back in May that Sheriff Tucker had been pestering him about some county zoning permits that should never have cleared. I didn't think much of it at the time. But if these men have enough cash to buy a sheriff in western North Carolina, I am not handing my daughter over to a system that might be bought and paid for. I will not take that risk with you. She was quiet for a long moment. And I just want to say, if you're ever in this kind of situation, this is the lesson. You are allowed to question authority. You are allowed to choose who you trust. The badge does not always equal safety, and any honest cop will tell you the same. I'm taking you to Mission Hospital first. You need to be looked at, and while you're being treated, I am making one phone call. My late wife's brother, Dennis Whitlock, had retired from the FBI field office in Atlanta about 4 years back. He still had every contact he'd built over 31 years. He told me once, half joking over a glass of bourbon at Eleanor's funeral, Hal, if you ever land in real trouble, you call me before you call anyone else. I mean it. Some things you tuck away for a rainy day. I got Hannah to Mission Hospital in Asheville by 8:50 in the morning. I told the intake nurse my daughter had been assaulted and held against her will. They wheeled her back inside 2 minutes. While the trauma team was getting her settled, I walked into the men's restroom on the first floor, locked myself in the handicapped stall, and I called Dennis. He picked up on the second ring. I told him everything. The vehicles, the men, the barn, the zip ties, what Hannah had told me about Travis and the borrowed money. I told him about Sheriff Tucker and the dirty permits. I gave him the address on Beaverdam Road. Dennis was silent for about 6 seconds. Hal, do not go back there. Do not contact local law enforcement under any circumstance. I'm making 3 calls in the next 10 minutes. Are you and Hannah physically secure right now? Hannah needs medical attention. I'm fine. Stay at the hospital. Someone federal will reach you within 90 minutes. 2 hours and 15 minutes later, a federal agent named Marcus Delaney introduced himself to me in the emergency waiting room. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes and a serious mouth. He shook my hand firmly and told me his team had been aware of the individuals tied to that property. They had been building a federal case for the better part of 9 months. What I had stumbled into that Thanksgiving morning was just one node of a much larger criminal network they had been quietly surveilling out of the Charlotte field office. He told me Travis had been located in the basement of the farmhouse, badly beaten but alive, and had already been transported to the very same mission hospital where we were sitting. He told me all 4 men had been taken into federal custody without a single shot fired. He told me Sheriff Tucker had been placed on administrative leave that afternoon, pending a formal indictment. Then he asked me how on earth I had gotten my daughter out of that barn without being detected. I told him about the tree line, the window, the smoker on the porch with his back turned. He looked at me a long, quiet moment. You were lucky, sir. I was prepared, I said. There's a meaningful difference. Hannah had 2 hairline rib fractures, a severe orbital contusion, moderate dehydration, and the early stages of frostbite on 3 fingers. They kept her overnight for observation. I slept in the green vinyl chair beside her hospital bed exactly the way I used to sleep in the rocking chair beside her bed when she was 6 years old, and had bad dreams about the wolves she'd seen at the Asheville Zoo. The same shape of chair, the same listening for her breathing, the same gratitude for every single inhale and exhale. Travis was on the 4th floor in the trauma unit. He had a broken nose, 4 broken fingers on his right hand, 3 cracked ribs, and a deep laceration above his temple that required 22 stitches. The doctors said another 14 hours, and the internal bleeding they found in his abdomen would have written a very different ending. The day Hannah was discharged, she and I sat in the hospital cafeteria together, drinking coffee that tasted like burnt cardboard, and she finally told me everything. Travis had gotten tangled up with men he did not really understand, through what he believed was a legitimate subcontracting deal that turned out to be a front for moving cash from drug operations across state lines. When he tried to walk away clean, they refused to let him. They had threatened her first, showed up at her elementary school parking lot back in September, told her by name what classroom she taught in, what time she usually left. He had gone along with it for almost 3 months trying to shield her, never telling her how deep the water had gotten, right up until that Thanksgiving Eve when the 4 of them showed up at the farmhouse and everything came apart at once. He sent that text to keep you safe, Daddy, Hannah said. He didn't want you walking into the middle of it. I know. He was trying to protect you too. I looked across that scratched-up cafeteria table at my daughter. Her eye was still swollen, the bruise turning yellow at the edges now. She had her mother's eyes. She had her mother's gentle reflex of finding the kindest interpretation for every soul around her, even when she was the one bleeding. He should have called me the first night this started, Hannah. That's what I'm here for. She was quiet. Then she asked, what would you have done? Exactly what I just did. She gave me a small, broken smile, the first real smile I had seen from her in 5 days. And I want to pause once more here to say something to anyone listening who has ever felt invisible inside their own family. Being a parent doesn't end when your child turns 18. It doesn't end when they get married. It doesn't end when they buy a house, have kids of their own. Being a parent is a lifetime contract, and the day your child needs you to walk through fire is the day that contract gets paid in full. The federal case rolled forward over the next several months. The 4 men were indicted on charges that filled a document I could barely follow, but Agent Delaney walked me through every page of it. Extortion, aggravated kidnapping, money laundering across 3 states, and 6 counts tied to the larger trafficking network that Dennis's old colleagues had been chasing. Sheriff Tucker was indicted separately in late January on 3 counts of bribery and 1 count of obstruction of justice. He resigned the morning the charges were filed. Travis cooperated fully. His attorney negotiated his testimony in exchange for reduced charges on his own end. He pleaded guilty to a single financial conspiracy count and received 18 months of probation, 600 hours of community service, and mandatory financial counseling. Hannah stood beside him in that federal courtroom in Asheville the day the sentence was handed down. I sat in the gallery 4 rows back, and I watched my daughter hold her husband's hand, and I thought hard about what it means to stay standing when the world has done its level best to flatten you. They are still married. I have my opinions about that. I keep most of them tucked away where they belong. What I will tell you is this. The Thursday after the federal sentencing came down, the Thursday closest to where Thanksgiving should have been the year before, Hannah pulled into my driveway at noon with 3 bags of groceries on her arm. She made the turkey. I made the pecan pie my mama taught me 60 years back. My granddaughter Wren, who is 5 years old and knows nothing about any of this, sat at Eleanor's old kitchen table coloring a picture of a horse with 7 legs and told us both it was the most beautiful horse anybody had ever drawn. We agreed completely. We sat at Eleanor's table with Eleanor's blue dishes. We ate until none of us could eat another bite. We talked about Eleanor. We talked about the 2nd grade class Hannah was going back to on Monday morning. We talked about absolutely nothing important for a long, long time. At one point, Wren climbed into my lap and fell sound asleep there, her whole warm, solid little body, just trusting that her grandfather was a safe place to lay her head down, and I sat completely still, with my coffee going cold on the table beside me, so I would not wake her. There are moments in a man's life that hold every other moment inside of them. That was one. So here is what I want to leave you with. Whoever you are out there listening to me, right now, most of us were raised to be polite. Most of us were raised to give people the benefit of the doubt, to not make a fuss, to not be the dramatic one in the family. And those instincts are good ones, most of the time. But there is a moment, sometimes, when politeness becomes the very thing that kills the people we love. Here in the United States, we have resources most folks forget about. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, completely confidential. Every state has adult protective services for situations involving elderly relatives. The FBI has an online tip submission portal for anyone who suspects organized criminal activity in their community. You do not have to be sure. You only have to be concerned. If your gut is telling you something is wrong with someone you love, please, do not explain it away. Do not wait for one more unanswered call. Do not wait for one more reasonable-sounding text message that does not quite add up. The mistake most of us make is assuming we are overreacting. The truth is, the people who love us are almost never overreacting. They are reading information the rest of us are too busy to see. The lesson of my Thanksgiving morning is this. A parent's intuition is not a feeling. It is data, gathered over decades of knowing one specific human being on this earth better than anyone else does. Honor it, act on it, drive the 35 minutes, knock on the door, walk the tree line. So I'll ask you something tonight. Have you ever had that cold feeling in your chest about someone you love and turned out to be right? Drop a number 1 in the comments if you believe I made the right call going up there alone. Drop a number 2 if you believe Travis deserved to be forgiven faster than he was. Drop a number 3 if you yourself have ever lived through a moment where your gut saved someone you love. And right below that, please, tell me where you are watching from tonight. What city, what state, what country, what time is it where you are right now? I read every single one of these comments out on my back porch with my coffee, and I genuinely love hearing where in this big world you are sitting. If this story moved something in you, if you have somebody in your life you would walk through a frozen pasture in the dark for, please share this video with them. You truly never know who needs to hear it tonight. Disclaimer. This is a fictional story inspired by common real-life patterns, but it has been 100% rewritten by me here in Asheville, North Carolina, to avoid any reused content and to bring you something original. If this video touched you, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the little bell so you do not miss the next story I tell you. I will see you on the next one. God bless, and stay close to the people who matter.